Okay, well, let me introduce. I have two people to introduce for Jump. The writer of the episode and consulting producer Hart Hansen, and of course, our illustrious creator and goddess Barbara Hall.
Always lurking.
If your mother wakes up and finds you...
You know, when I looked at the message boards for this episode, there were people who were drawing lots of allusions to the ring and how clever we were in getting in a whole bunch of ring allusions.
Well, that was certainly my thought when I... Not at all.
We're not that clever.
We are not that clever.
I can tell you there's nothing written in there.
But this was a continuation of a story about the little boy that she'd been babysitting for, so...
Yeah, people who watched the whole series would recognize this kid as a boy with cystic fibrosis that Barbara wrote about a few episodes before, and they were so good together, we thought, well, let's continue the story with kind of an obvious jumping-off point.
Judges, a number of highly played...
Was this our first dream sequence adventure? I think it was.
I don't think it was our first dream sequence.
Didn't we have Kevin on fire?
Yeah,
oh, that's right.
Kevin's leg's on fire.
That was a nice moment that Tim Busfield, the director, came up with of sort of doing it all in one, of her turning from the mirror. At first you see the mirror empty and then Adam just appears in it.
Tim Busfield did a great job on this
Yes, he did.
episode, I thought. At first, when he came to work on it, I thought that he was not interested. But it was simply that he simply got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
really
interesting.
got it.
He really had very few questions.
Very few questions, very few notes, which to a writer is nice. Unlike Jim Heyman.
I was just going to say this. You don't usually get that experience with me.
Treated as a hero, not a pariah.
This was one of the biggest shows that we had mounted production-wise.
Was this the first unproducible show? Because we've had many since then.
Yeah, this could it be the first one, and it was a sort of classic writer moment when Hart and I were in the very first production meeting, and they started talking about how they were going to launch this car engine through an aquarium. and
That will make sense later on in the show.
Hart and I started laughing about this so uncontrollably. We couldn't believe that they're really going to do this.
Like 5-year-olds, we laughed. The notes from the network on this episode were voluminous.
Really?
Oh, those are
what were their
risky.
concerns?
The first thing was there's a dream They were worried that people would be confused by the fact that God appeared to Joan in a dream sequence in the guise of what we would think at the time, coming up to prove otherwise, was a living person.
Right.
So they were very concerned about God/ghost/living person.
Well, it was so early on, we were still establishing all those rules.
Right.
You know, every one of these early episodes were setting the rules for what God could and couldn't do.
Yeah. Yes.
And I guess the rules just kept changing to a degree, huh?
Well, they kept being established because now once we've done this, we've established, okay, God can appear in your dreams, but when she saw Rocky outside of the dream,
Yes.
that was really Rocky. And
That was the second part where she says, so that was you I saw in my dream. Yes, says God. And then she says, and then in the cemetery, also coming up, he says, no, that was between you and Rocky.
Right.
That is where I expected a lot of network notes because we were saying God believes in ghosts, but that kind of went by.
Got away with it.
Playing all of this.
The City of Arcadia Police Department no longer exists.
Well,
Oh,
this was
boy.
this very simple story where we dismantled the...
What we were doing, what we discovered was that if Will was the police chief,
right.
we couldn't get him on the street as much without it looking like, Hart Hansen.
Well, we couldn't just... I've heard of him.
We thought it would be better to...
Where is he now?
If he was more on...
Yeah. I heard he's making a pilot.
if he was more on the street. And we didn't want him to be demoted.
Right.
So this is what we came up with.
Actually gave us a lot of fun stuff to play because we did want to play...
That was me. Right.
And look at that. We did want to play corruption within the town. That was always part of it, was, corruption inside the police force.
Yeah.
Now,
There's
this is
another
one-
great casting. The casting in this show is remarkable. Becky Wallstrom is incredibly good in this part. I remember casting
part that
her.
you wrote, as I
and
recall.
Chris way
and
back
this
when.
particular story between the two of them is one of
Yeah.
the best. And they,
And this, Michael Welch can do anything. Unless things have changed since I left the show.
yes, he still can do
He
anything.
can still do anything. And also can recite huge volumes of words at a very high rate.
Science
high
words.
pace.
We just have to type them.
Listen up. Get somebody down to City Hall, not an intern.
You got it.
Kevin, good. I'm glad you're here.
What's going on? Your old man just brought down a city. What? It's very impressive.
All tabloid journalists are English.
I always liked this guy, though.
He's fabulous.
It was great. He was so self-assured.
If I recall, Jim, it was your idea to bring him back from an earlier.
Yes.
I had ND journalist, and you said, "Oh, bring back." He had a name.
He was our fashion
Yeah.
fashion
Yeah.
columnist.
Oh, that's right.
or
He was
something,
writing in
right?
the fashion column.
And then, taking that into account, the scene changed a little bit because that character is more arch and sarcastic, and it was a great idea because less exposition, more drama.
That sounds good to me.
Oh boy.
Now, this is a fabulous scene and great use of music, I have to say.
You know, this song, we tried to use this song in an earlier episode, and it didn't work because it stepped on the moment and the drama and the narrative. But here, it seemed to play so well underneath that wonderful Joan of Arcadia combination of drama and pathos and comedy.
Yeah, the tone of this scene is so,
We gather here today.
one doesn't want to say broad, because it's not, it's just...
It's out there.
It's out there, and
That
this
was- that
somehow
was
holds
your
it
idea.
together. Oh, it was not.
It was. When I first wrote the script, the first version of the script, this was a more straight-ahead funeral. And you said, I don't think Joan would go there. So that just changed the whole tenor of the scene and made it, I think, a different kind of funeral scene than usual. The only two people in the scene that get it are Joan and the mother.
Rocky's
The mother,
mother,
right. And
the
she
dead
makes
child.
it okay.
With the remark about Elvis.
Exactly. And she knows that her son was a very odd, morbid little boy obsessed with death. So, in
And
a
it
way,
keeps his character alive in the
Corinne
scene.
snorted so well. I think that's one of the reasons why we liked having her.
she was great.
Very honest. You can see it's a very honest moment between these two actors.
Yeah.
That the fact that she would snort.
Until today.
And once again, Amber turning
I
on
know.
a dime, turning
Unbelievable.
from laughs to bathos in a second.
Yeah.
And boy, does that help a writer. It always worries execs. Can you change tone
Right.
in a
Can
in
you
a
get
scene?
there from
and
here?
these people can do it. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know what's going on.
Anyone else know? I love that. I also like Mary's scarf in this scene.
I like Mary's tone too. That she's just totally accepting of Joan.
Yes, she
because
just knows what's gonna
She never
happen.
knows
Yeah.
what Joan's gonna do next.
Okay, be careful.
Yeah.
I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints of snow.
I thought this actor did a very nice job with this reading because it's sometimes in these moments when someone's reading a poem, it feels so rehearsed and
Yeah.
theatrical.
And maudlin, yeah. That's really nice.
Oh,
And
there it
then
is.
Dead children, very scary. He does the God wave too, which
does.
is,
Such a haunting image, isn't it?
yeah,
he is.
little boy in a suit.
Yeah.